Explain the machine mindset versus that ecosystem approach.
So the notion of a well-oiled machine came from the early 20th century when products were proliferating, the assembly lines were coming in, that whole thing. Before that, in the 19th century, basically management was very different than it was. We think that our notion of management has always been around. It's not. Okay, so let's pick on salespeople for a sec. I mean, there's a number of types of salespeople, but let's say I've got one person who uses their charisma and their ability to develop relationships. You've got the trust of the people that'll work with you rather than just go, well, they don't care about me, I'm going somewhere else. If I understand aspects of human behavior and I can actually put together teams of these complementary strengths where the stuff that sucks the life out of me is one of the things that you're good at, and you're like, please give me those things.
We'll do it live. We'll do it live. Drop the mic with Jason Hunt.
Thank you for sending over Freedom by Design. I love that. First of all, I love the approach that you took on LinkedIn in a platform that's inundated with cold outreach, for you to actually reach out and give the option of like, hey, I want to give you a copy of my book. Would you like the digital download, or would you like a physical copy? And I'm like, hey, I actually love having something tangible in my hand. I'd love the physical copy. Happy to pay for the shipping, but you just sent it.
Nope.
Right? So I appreciate that. Unfortunately, I just got it, so I've only got through about the first couple chapters. So,
Okay.
But no, I definitely appreciate it. And I definitely want to dive into Freedom by Design today. Fantastic read thus far, and a lot of thought-provoking items that I want to discuss specifically for entrepreneurs out there like myself that I think would definitely benefit from the book. But before we get into that, I'd like to talk a bit about, your transformation yourself from founding to freedom. Obviously, a lot of founders listen to this podcast, and it's a journey for founders, to understand things. And sometimes we just don't have time to even seek out mentorship for this stuff. But it's important to understand from people that have been there in the past. Maybe you can explain that journey a bit in that 30-year evolution.
Well, it was interesting because when I started my business was in 1995, and I had gone. Now, by 1996, I was 1 year in my own business, but I had worked as an associate in another firm before that, and it had been 3 years without any holidays whatsoever. And somebody said, you need to take time off. You're getting kind of peaked, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then my wife and I actually booked to take a week off to go down to Mexico. Okay. And then she got sick. And I'm like, okay, we have a 2-year-old child here, or I guess she was 4 by then. And it's like, how do we take time out? And she's like, no, you're exhausted. You should still go. And I'm like, okay, alone? And she's like, well, yeah, you're exhausted. I'm like, so you're suggesting I go alone to Mexico? Like, this wasn't computing. I couldn't figure it out. And it's like, it just sounded weird to me, and she said, yeah, like, look at you, like, I promise you'll be better coming back after you've had some time off. And I'm like, okay. So I thought, it still felt weird. And I thought, well, normally people have conferences, but for guys like me, there was no type of conference for, small business consultant sort of thing. And I thought, well, I could have my own conference. So I literally packed up a 4-inch binder on customer satisfaction surveys. It was the only way I could actually settle in my mind going away alone for a vacation without my family. I mean, it just made no sense, right? And so it's like, okay, so I did that, and it was fascinating. I land the first day and a half, I did nothing but sleep. Like literally 16 hours in a row. Then I wake up, go have a meal, and then I go back down for another 12 hours and stuff like that. And, I did one of these, we were supposed to, I was on a Monday, Friday to Friday excursion, one of those like sun holiday things, whatever it was. And by Monday I was like, like I start getting a little bit of energy, so I went and I did a little, one of those tours or whatever. But then by Tuesday, I'm like, I got to get to work. I'm supposed to be on my conference. So in the mornings, I was literally sitting there reading through the binder, and about every 45 minutes, I'd just jump in the pool, go for a little swim, come back up, and I keep reading the thing. And long story short is I got way more rest. I was amazed at my energy when I came back, and I managed to get through the whole binder. It was interesting. I was doing that in the mornings and the afternoons. I'd just sort of poke around town, and this was out in San Jose del Cabo, just outside of Cabo San Lucas. And so I get back on Friday. The next month, I sold 4 of these things for $10,000, $2,500 each. In addition to the regular income that I was making on my little business,
I recently returned from speaking at a conference about AI and marketing, and my inbox went absolutely bonkers with people requesting my presentation slides. Now here's the thing, instead of emailing slides to dozens of people, I decided to do something better. I launched Amplify Your Brand on School. It's where I'm sharing the AI tools that actually work, not the garbage everyone's hyping about. The exact processes our agency uses to save 15 plus hours every week. Real strategies that drive results. You'll get my slides for my presentations, weekly live business audits, and access everything we do at Merged Media. No fluff, no BS, just what works. If you want to learn more, go check out Amplify Your Brand on School. That's school, SKOOL.com/AYB. See you on the inside.
this time off thing's a pretty good deal. So in the next 15 months, I think I took 8 weeks off, sometimes with my wife, sometimes with my wife and our daughter. And sometimes, a couple of times I went alone. I found different conferences and stuff. And after that, I thought, school teachers get like 10 weeks off a year. Okay. In fact, I think they get 12. They get 2 weeks of Christmas. They get a week in spring break, and then they get 9 weeks in the summer. So it was 12. I thought, well, if I take 12 weeks off in a row like that, or 9 weeks off in a row, I wouldn't have clients to come back to.
Nope.
But you know what? I could take a week at any given point in time. I just proved to myself I could. So I started taking the last week of the month off. And what I found was my income just started to grow significantly because, you know what? I was more rested. I was more present. And it's amazing what you can do in 3 weeks if you know you've only got 3 weeks to deal with it rather than 4. I sorted it out with clients and we were in great shape. And ever since then, I've just continued to grow from the perspective of making sure that I take time off. Now we're up to about 18 weeks a year, and 1 or 2 of those I might cheat. I might go meet a client that's overseas or something. But for the most part, it's amazing what happens when your brain is fresh. So when you talk about transformation, that was pretty early days for that, but it's been great.
There's a few things I want to unpack there. And,
Sure.
Firstly, I want to get to the how, right? Because you can obviously, you can even shrink that to a micro where it's like your day, you don't need to spend 8 hours at work a day.
No.
You can shrink that to 3 if you just be more effective. And much like that transformation from going to working, 52 weeks a year to going straight to about 40 or whatever it may be. Tell me about that whole transformation to get into that point, because I'm sure there were some hiccups. It wasn't just a switch.
Well, the thing I focused on was I didn't think about the whole year. I just looked at 1 month at a time. And one of the things I was doing was outsource sales management at that time. Well, guess what? All the different clients that I was working with, they're trying to meet their number. They're fine if they meet me on a Thursday or Friday and then a following, a week and a half, like on a Monday or Tuesday after that. They were absolutely fine with that. They had no issue with it, didn't even blink about it. And so then what happened was they were in better shape because they were really focusing on their stuff. We didn't end up taking time during that last week of the month. I came back really fresh, and then I could give them better insights in terms of some of the things I noticed about what they were doing. Their actual pace of growth accelerated. And so, and it was just literally by focusing, okay, well, how do I make sure that I'm meeting all my client needs within the 3 weeks instead of the 4? And it literally was that simple. And, so sometimes you put in a 9-hour day or whatever. Who cares? Like 9 or 10 hours, it's not the end of the world. Was it every day? No. But at the same time, you know what? I managed it so that the week off, was there as a permanent thing. And then after that, the first thing I do when I get the calendar for the next year is I'd literally block off the last week of the month. And now what I do is I work 3 weeks out of the month. The 4th week I take off. But if it's a 5-week month, because we got 52, not 48 weeks in the year, I block those off as well. because 3 weeks in the month should do the trick. And just by getting used to that notion, by looking at it a month at a time, I was fine. And I wasn't charging hourly or anything like that. I was charging people per month. And they were, as long as they were getting the result, they were absolutely fine with that. They were totally comfortable with that. I had been charging that rate. I don't charge on an hourly basis. So we were in great shape there. And they want me fresh.
When you initially made that switch, and by the way, that's fantastic to have the the discipline to be like, I am going to only work these days, and I'm not going to work those ones. I'm not going to look at work. I'm not going to it was enough work for me to put my phone in the kitchen when I go to bed at night instead of having it beside my bed, let alone actually shutting down work entirely for weeks on end. But
sure,
when you initially did that switch, was there guilt those times where you're taking the time off, not being focused on the work as much as you should, like personally just feeling like you should be somewhere else, but you're here?
Well, okay, two things about that. First of all, I had staff that saw the difference, and they said, Michael, when you're fresh, everything goes better. You need to get out of here. Number two, if I stayed in the city, I ended up cheating and working. I literally had to go away. Okay, if I didn't go away,
cheating on work, that is.
Cheating and working in other words, instead of taking it off, I couldn't sit at home and have it off. I just couldn't. It's like, if I'm there, well, I'll do this, or somebody calls or whatever. I was in Mexico. In Mexico at the time, guess what? Phone service was horrible. So it was easy, you turn off the phone and you don't turn it back on till you get back in. Because that was back at the time when if you ran cell bills up, you were looking at a $4,000 or $5,000 bill, because there was no sharing and all that stuff that you do these days, right? So there were some natural impediments to actually jumping into work. And of course, most people didn't have Wi-Fi at that time. We're talking about the mid to late 90s. That in the early days where I was building this habit, that was a big deal. So what happened is, as long as I went away, I could actually write, and I'd read and I'd do different things, but I wouldn't do client work. And I wrote my first book that way. I've got 3 books now, but the first book I wrote was based on that. It was fascinating. I went to Hawaii with my wife. I wrote it in the mornings. It took 2 weeks to write the whole book. The first cut of it. It took another 6 months to edit the thing, and that's a whole different conversation. But it was fascinating to see, because the stuff just started pouring out of me.
So the hardest part of this transformation was being cognizant about the necessity to disconnect from everything, and putting yourself it's almost like the cookie jar on the counter thing, where you want to lose weight, don't put the cookie jar on the counter, hide it in the cupboard, right?
That's right. And had I not been so much on blinker back when my wife kicked me out to actually take the time off, I wouldn't have taken the time off. And secondly, had I not seen such a big difference of the impact of taking the time off, put an extra $10,000 in your jeans when your total for the month was probably between 8 and 12, and there's another 10 that came in this month because just after taking time off. I promise. Even Pavlov's dog is going to understand that one, and next thing you know, we're like, yeah, this is a good idea. I think we should do this more. And that was back in 1996. So I've had a little bit of practice, let's say.
That's brilliant. Now, to go into Freedom by Design, your book, your most recent book, you talk about the machine mindset versus the ecosystem approach framework. I thought this was quite interesting, because naturally, the default is, at least for my small business, it's let's create systems, so we can get anybody out there to come in here, sit in that role and do it. And it's no emphasis on the human element.
Right.
So explain the machine mindset versus that ecosystem approach.
Sure. So the notion of a well-oiled machine came from the early 20th century, when products were proliferating, the assembly lines were coming in, that whole thing. Before that, in the 19th century, basically management was very different than it was. We think that our notion of management has always been around. It's not. It used to be that management was learned from the master. Apprenticeship was the model that most people were running with there. Whether you were a doctor, whether you were a blacksmith, whether you were an architect, an engineer, it was all done by apprenticeship. And then what happened though is if you've got a veteran and a novice, and you had 20 different veterans, each with their 2 or 3 novices, and each of the novices are learning 5 or 6 things. And in the spirit of the veteran, what happens is you get a lumpy assembly line. So it just didn't work. So what they did was they went to more of a command and control style, where instead of having one person learning 6 things, you had 6 people each doing one thing on an assembly line, and their job was doing that. The employees hated it. They absolutely thought it was terrible. In fact, they'd start sabotaging machines. Well, the boss didn't care. They'd make them pay for them, and if they didn't pay for them, they'd fire them and get somebody else cheaper that could do that kind of stuff. And that's where unions came out. Unions actually came out because of this. And the assembly line mentality, people were treated like cogs in a system, okay, cogs in a machine. And the truth is that the owners didn't care, so they said, sure, we'll pay them with the unions because we're making so much more that we, it's still worth it to us. Like if you look at Bethlehem Steel in the early 1900s, early 20th century, they were actually cutting about 9 linear feet, just over 9 linear feet per minute. So they were processing and cutting 9 linear feet of steel per minute, okay? Steel rods and things like that. Just by doing some management changes and running the thing more like an assembly line, within several months, they went from 9 linear feet to 50 linear feet per minute. So with fewer staff, because they were just running it on this assembly line. And so what you're finding is that the manager, sure, we got lots of it. There was so much money that they're like, we're not changing this. Sure, you want more, we'll pay you more. And literally, that's where unions came from. Now, if I've got consistency of inputs and consistency of outcomes, okay, for example, in product manufacturing, no matter how complex or complicated the algorithm, I can break it down, I can get people to do it. When you go to information services, it's not complicated, it's more complex. It's a whole different level. And so the problems are not predictable. You need everybody else's brain. You need each other's brains involved to try to solve the issues. And as a result, what happened was moving away from that. Now, all of a sudden, I can't just force people to do what I need them to do. I mean, if somebody held a gun to my head and said, lift that rock, I'll lift the rock. Well, lifting a rock is simple. Whereas if somebody holds a gun to my head and says, figure out that computer program, the brain just doesn't work like that. I'm like going, I got a gun to my head or whatever, right? So what happens is it just doesn't work. So the truth is you had to go to something that's far more human-centric than a machine. Now, if you look at the difference, a machine is built for the benefit of its owners. I had to laugh. I was asking a guy, he said, so, you have a car? And he's like, yep. I said, well, for whose benefit is? He said, my kids, they're the ones that take the car now. It's not me. I said, yeah, but they're part of the family that owns the machine. If you look at it, if I'm a cog in the system, as an employee, I'm the equivalent of like the wheels or the electrical system or something like that. So you're actually part of the machine. It's not for you. Whereas in an ecosystem, it's built for everybody. It has to work for everybody. Now, it has to work for the owners. It has to work for the customers, but it also has to work for each of the people that are in that ecosystem. So the reason that we go to machine is this notion, like you said, systems are there, right? What they say is people come, people go, systems are there to stay. We should follow the systems. And it's like, okay, so I have a question. What is the difference? Okay, if you look at a company at $1 million in revenue and the same company at 5 million in revenue and the same company at 10 million in revenue, the question is, what do they share? Well, short answer is hopefully they have the same product or service. Sometimes even that morphs. They definitely, if you've got a strong company, they've got the same value set and a few of the same key people. That's it. I certainly don't have the same number of people at 1 million that I have at 10. Everything else changes. You're going to outstrip your structures. So the reason people go to systems is they go, at least I understand those. So there's this illusion of control. Okay. But the truth is you're going to outstrip your structures anyway. People don't know how to corral people. And what they try to do is put in structures or systems that get people to do what they want them to do, rather than putting systems that allow people to be at their best. If I can actually put in systems and structures that support people to be at their best, then I get them at their best. They're happier. I get more freedom. And the truth is that if I build teams of complementary strengths, I'm in a situation where this really can work. And we've actually built this up to about and including about 200 people within a company. And we can build using a team-based system rather than a sort of a hierarchical thing where everybody goes to competency models. If you use a team-based system, you can actually keep the focus on results, which is really what customers pay for. And you can actually set it up so that people grow as well. So the bottom line is if I have something that actually really supports people to be at their best, I get the X factor about their contributions. They're having a better time because they're doing what they do best. They're contributing things that they want to contribute that make a big difference. And by putting together teams of complementary strengths, I'm in way better shape and I can handle the complex problems, because even the kid that's just a new grad from university might have an idea or a different perspective that some of the veterans may not be thinking of. So he or she could actually make a contribution to that team, even though they don't necessarily know everything there is to know. I mean, they still have to go through their learning curves and all that. So what I found was that the machine model was fine as long as products were there, even though people hated it. But in an information world, it just doesn't work anymore.
I'd love to get your thoughts, because there's a tangible example that's top of mind for me right now. We have a sales guy in the company that has been with us for a decade. Dave, he's great. He's awesome. We've moved around to so many different roles within the company, but right now we're in this position where we're trying to create processes so we can easily onboard that next salesperson and the next salesperson after that. As a tangible example, using like a sales department or sales team, how would this ecosystem approach transition come to fruition in this sort of a case?
Okay, so let's pick on salespeople for a sec. There's a number of types of salespeople, but let's say I've got one person who uses their charisma and their ability to develop relationships, and they're really good at listening to the customer and finding out what that customer needs, and they've got the ability to sort of adapt their thinking so that they can see the product and service literally serving that customer. Okay, those are skills that you absolutely want to have. Those are skills that you want to nurture. What is the person not that good at? The paperwork. So what I do is I get a right-hand person, an assistant, that can support the person on the paperwork. Okay, I might have somebody else who's really strong on the paperwork, and they're also, with any salesperson, you need strong listening skills. So they have the ability to listen and stuff, but they may be really good at putting together presentations, and they're really good at the paperwork. But the part that they're not necessarily as good at is finding new leads. So what I may do is, set up a system where they get access to a few new leads. But the other side of it is when the person does that, quite often you get these, what I'm going to say, more studious types per se. People go to trust them, and they can get a lot more repeat and referral business. And that's how they would grow, as opposed to me having to constantly feed them or whatever. So I'd look at, what are the different personalities that I've got? What are the different strengths that they bring to the sales team? And then I'd actually customize the support structures so that they can be at their best, so that my team might not get the same uniform set of systems, but I've got people that are all nailing it and achieving the types of results that I want. So that's an example of how I'd use different structures to support different people. And it all comes from listening. One of the best people that actually did an amazing job of this was the I can't remember the name of the guy, but he was the coach of the Chicago Bulls when Michael Jordan was there.
Phil Jackson.
Thank you. I was thinking Michael Jordan, so I missed Phil Jackson. But Phil Jackson he had a common theme that everybody had, but he'd quietly sit with each person and he'd talk about their unique contributions into the team. And as a result, he got way stronger teams as a result of that. And the other guy that did that in the NCAA, of course, was John Wooden. And that's literally how Wooden did it. He would watch and see what are the strengths of each person and how do I help them nurture those strengths so that they've got a unique contribution on the team. And so he says, I don't need everybody on the team to perform the same. I need them each to have their respective strengths, and I need the collective team to perform an overall result, not necessarily every single member. So by looking at complementary strengths and then supporting the different strengths of the people, it takes a little bit more work. But I got to tell you, as you get a groove with this stuff, it's actually less effort, and it grows people more, and it also builds the trust in the relationship, so that if you do have stumbles, which we will all have stumbles as we grow business, you've got the trust of the people that'll work with you rather than just go, well, they don't care about me, I'm going somewhere else.
Are there specific tools that you recommend, whether it's the MBTI, whether personality tests such as that, the Myers-Briggs, it could be a StrengthsFinder. Are there certain tools that you recommend businesses deploy to understand what those fundamental differences are in strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, in fact, there's a whole series. If we look at that, I look at that when we're hiring. Okay. And one of the things that, just so that you know, I know that you just recently got the book, and you're part way in. When you get to the chapter on hiring, one of the things that I've listed in there is, if you go, and you look there, we've got a URL where you get a free download of our entire hiring system. Okay. And this is what we will do to help people grow their companies. My attitude is, it's just as important who you keep out of your company as who you bring into your company, because literally 50% of the game is hiring. But when you're looking at hiring, there's a number of instruments we use. So one of them is an equivalent of the MBTI. Okay. We actually use the Kiersey-Bates, which is, again, an equivalent of it. We look at the organization we deal with is TTI for the behavioral stuff, and there's two of them. They've got the something they call managing for success, but it's dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance. There's some different organizations. I think Insights also does that. Then these guys also have personal interests, attitudes, and values. So I start to get a sense of the cultural bent of the person. We'll even use things like the Wonderlic. I want to see speed of learning and how much they change it as far as that's concerned. And that's quite often used, for example, when people are hiring or when they're looking at football players, okay, in the NFL, they actually run them all through the Wonderlic to see what their speed is of reaction. Now, that works when somebody's got to deal with disparate things going on all the time. If somebody's just focused on one thing, like a salesperson is, I don't need to worry about that. But if I got a project manager who's dealing with competing priorities all the time, I want to know how quickly they can actually adapt to different things. And then we also use the Kolbe A index as well. And that's KOLBE index. And Kathy Kolbe's done a marvelous job over the years building something that goes to somebody's striving instincts. So with some things, you want to adapt to somebody else's model of the world. Okay. But with the Kolbe, the key is you want to understand where your strengths are and really dovetail in on your own strengths in terms of where you operate from, because that will give you a chance to be at your best rather than be under high stress because you're trying to morph to somebody else's way of operating. So I find that no single test by itself does the trick. But if you use enough of them and you start to get indications and you combine that with their actual behavior, you can actually tease things out. There is so much about human behavior that's available that people don't realize. And in fact, one of the things we talk about in the book is just 4 basic elements of human behavior that if you just adopt these 4 behaviors into how you look at your employees, you can actually, instead of having your employees be a mystery, it actually starts to become obvious, because people look at structures and they look at behaviors and they're like, well, no matter what structures I put in, like, it seems like the behaviors aren't lining up. Well, what people don't realize is there's structure to behavior. And if you can understand some of the basic structures to behavior that drive all of us, then you're in a situation where you can be so much better off.
I think a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs out there don't really take the time to consider what we're talking about right now. That we're so fixated on, again, using some VAs in another country to create a process, to do some mundane task over and over again. And then we get upset or we say it's poor when they do something that's not up to snuff. But really the thing that lacks, anytime we're using, VAs from across the sea, or any company out there is doing that, there is that human element that's lost. You know what I mean? Not just the fact that they're working at 3 o'clock in the morning their time, but it really is. There's no human element there. There's no connection there, right? So that is, I think, a big missed opportunity or a very opportunistic opportunity where people are just like, oh, it's cheap labor, you can get it for cheap, but they take out that human element, which is the exact reason why the quality of the work is poor.
Well, and even in those environments, you know what, you're dealing with humans. And so the more I understand what's going on with people, the more I can actually gear things. And it's a lot simpler than people fear. And it takes more than zero effort, if you know what I mean. And people say, well, I put in effort. Yeah, but here's the thing. If you take a look, we focus on 4 different aspects of human behavior. So first of all, we all have the biological need to survive. Okay. Fear comes from the need to survive. Fear is, a lot of people treat fear as a bad thing. No, fear is quite helpful. It keeps us alive. Okay. And you know, a lot of people say, well, you know, we're logical. We're not emotional. No, we're not. We're emotional. Human beings are emotional. And it's actually a design feature of being human. And the reason is because logic takes too long. There's a bus coming at me. Well, what are the pros and cons of getting out of the way? Too late. Okay. Whereas I see a bus, I go, eek, get out of the way. And next thing you know, I live to have another day.
That's
Emotion
right.
works very fast, right? And now not everything's a life or death thing. But I got to tell you that the biological need to survive, you know, anytime we feel threatened, that's there. And if you understand that that's there, you can deal with it. The second thing we have is this innate desire to thrive. As long as we're not in survival, the desire to thrive is what actually you know, drives us. You know, we are a striving species. And so what happens is, you know, I don't need to have all my survival needs for life handled before I thrive, because otherwise, why would a 5-year-old ever share a toy? You know, but if the two are there and survival shows up, I'll protect myself first. But as long as I feel like the environment's safe, then I'll do stuff to thrive. That's why everybody talks about, well, you have to create a safe environment for your people. Well, that sounds good, but what does that look like? Well, don't steal their ideas. Listen to them, include their feedback, you know, treat them like they really belong here and you really appreciate them being here. And all of a sudden they relax and they give you their best. You know, the third element is both the need and the desire to connect, because inherently we know that together we're stronger. And the fourth thing we saw through COVID, which is the ability to adapt to a changing situation. Even if we don't like the changes, we are capable of adapting to it, whereas a lot of species aren't. So if you just play with those 4, survive, thrive, connect, and adapt, you just start playing with that. 80 to 90% of the behaviors that mystify you in your business all of a sudden become logical. You know, our perceived future shapes our present. What? And we're always on the lookout. Well, what for? For things, traps, potholes, things that we could get stuck in, because that shapes how we are in the present. If I see a dim or stuck future, I'm not going to be very happy in the present. If I see a future full of possibilities, I don't have to know what it is. I just have to know that there's options and alternatives. All of a sudden, I feel better in the present. So, you know, when they talk about leadership is about rallying people to this brighter future, it's because if I see a brighter future, I'm happier in the present, and I want to work with others, especially if they got my back and I've got theirs. Again, the safety issues handled. So I'm in a situation where things can actually flow. Now, this takes a little bit of work, not a lot, but a little bit. And that's, again, back to your question about ecosystem. You can see how an ecosystem, if I understand aspects of human behavior, and I can actually put together teams of these complementary strengths where the stuff that sucks the life out of me is one of the things that you're good at. And you're like, please give me those things. Sure, you want the Excel spreadsheets? They're yours, you know? And you're like, oh, thank God. And are you going to handle this difficult situation? Sure, I'm delighted to take care of those people, because my perspective might be different than yours. All of a sudden, we get a much stronger arrangement.
You know, it's as we speak about, you know, human behavior, we talk about, you know, we talk about fear and the importance of fear and how it drives us and motivates us to thrive. AI is something that a lot of people are fearing right now. A lot of people are not comfortable with how quickly AI is coming into their work life, personal life. How do you foresee AI playing a role in everything that we're talking about here today and the importance of the human element?
Well, it's interesting because with AI there, it's almost like this will mark the completion of the information age, because information is so ubiquitous that we'll have it all. Everybody has it at their fingertips. It's not an advantage for some over others. And so if you look from a macro perspective, people are saying that the next trend is basically the age of creativity, because it's no longer the information age. The people with the better information, well, when everybody has better information, it's not about that. It's people that can creatively use it for the benefit of others that, obviously people want to pay for. Now, that said, there are traps with AI. AI is taking a lot of lower paid jobs. Now, if I'm in a situation where, let's say I'm a junior engineer and there's senior engineers, and AI is taking out some of the jobs that would give me part of my learning curve to become a senior, it's actually creating some issues. So it will take jobs, no question. A lot of the lower paid jobs will actually go to AI, just like you can use robotics, and they use robotics in a lot of plants now instead of having people do those lower tasks. But here's the thing: the creativity of people is already starting to do. There are ways that people are using right now, and they're still working this out, to figure out how to get that learning curve to get myself to become a senior or become an expert in my field. And given that the high preponderance of service-based businesses, most of those businesses are based in some level of expertise. So the key, that's the trick, I think, in terms of when you're looking at service-based companies or any company that's a product service mix where it's based in the expertise of their people. The key is, how do we find unique ways to get the training into people who are more junior, given that we're now using AI to take those jobs that would be the learning curve for some of the junior people. And as people figure out ways to do that, I think that allows us a whole different level of what's available, and it just accelerates a number of things. I'm not sure where, nobody knows where it's actually going to go, but it's fascinating watching it. It's, some of the opportunities are huge. The risks are also huge on it. Do I see it being the end of anything? No. It's not going to end our planet or anything like that. It's another thing that can really support life, and it's gonna have impediments as well. And our ability collectively to sort out how to work through and around and with those impediments is what's going to allow us to come out on the other side even stronger, just like any challenge does.
I feel 100%. I find that AI is actually forcing us as humans to be more real, to be more authentic and more genuine, because we are creating the stories, right? And there's more emphasis on creating the stories as opposed to doing a lot of the monotonous things that AI will be able to take away from the things that we can do to have those experiences and tell stories. Because that's one thing, even now, Sora 2, which is the video AI tool done by Sora. I'm playing around with that tool, and I'm having a blast doing it, because what I'm doing is I'm going back to things I was doing when I had a band back in 2005 and 2006, and using AI to recreate music videos of lyrics that I wrote 20 years ago. And this is just something that AI just can't come up with this stuff on its own. It needs my input and my prompt, my personal experience to create that piece of content. Right.
Correct.
So I think that's the important part, is us as humans really are going to leverage AI to be able to have more experiences and create more stories.
Yeah, and what I find is the people that really do well with AI are the people that don't park their brain at the door. So a lot of times you say, well, it's 80% of the AI and 20%, people. And it's like, well, it's more. Yes, and it's more like 10%, 80%, 10%, if you know what I mean. So it's like you really have to think through, what is it that I'm looking for and what are different possibilities, and you take runs at things. Then you get the input of AI to actually enhance the stuff that you've started to come up with. Then you have work to do to actually turn it into something that really suits what you need, as far as that side of it is. And I find that the people that are willing to continue to put the work in and think the thing through, then AI becomes, an incredible accelerant to really achieve what you want in far less time, and it's not clean by itself. Usually, on the other side, anybody can tell. You can tell when something's written by AI. I don't know about you, but I certainly can. It's like, you don't have to read too much in AI to know that what's going on there. So, but if I can keep the humanity, here's the thing, like you said, with storytelling, well, anything that taps human emotion AI is based in algorithms and pattern recognition and pattern delivery based on what it's recognizing, and they're even trying to do stuff around human behavior, but it doesn't actually replace what it is to be human. So the that's where creativity and other things come in. And so while it really can accelerate our progress, used properly, I don't think it's going to replace humans. And where it does replace humans, the quality is just not there. And again, as we figure out the difference between what a real person did and an attempt to clone it with AI, it doesn't quite cut it. Although there's lots of really cool things that AI is doing. So I mean, it's a fascinating subject.
So yeah, I mean, one thing about the human element is spontaneity, right? Just the element of surprise and,
Yeah.
things like that, which I think is super important and what makes us human. And like I know all about, I can sniff out AI content a mile away. I did a research paper on comparing AI copy versus human copy, which is published in the journal Brand Strategy. And human copy won 9 of the 12 tests that we did because people connected with the human nuance of the human copywriter writing certain making a cheeky remark in that first sentence, or maybe it's using brackets saying sarcastic, just to let people know they were being sarcastic. It's that type of stuff where the human copy was largely outperforming AI. And let's be honest, when you see AI copy, when you see an M dash, when you see the word unlock, elevate, delve, it turns you off. I don't want to read this content. I'd rather give my own prompt into my Claude or ChatGPT and read it for myself rather than reading somebody else's.
Yeah, I want to know what you think. I don't want to know what your machine thinks. I want to know what you think, because that's where our connections occur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're seeing it now a lot on, and look, I mean, there are ways to properly use the AI to be able to.
Absolutely.
I'm a terrible copywriter. I rely on AI to, put my thoughts into a more articulate manner and more articulate format to be more easily read by people on LinkedIn. But it's my thoughts.
Sure.
So, but
and as long as you take that last 10% to rehumanize the parts of that were sort of stripped out, now you're in a situation where you can use the best of both. And I also know that there's a lot of coders that AI doesn't replace coders, but it's really a great colleague to coders, because what they'll do, when they've seen algorithms, it will literally do the legwork for you, So there are a lot of places where AI makes an incredible difference.
How are you personally using AI to the best benefit?
So far, I mean, one of the things, the most obvious easy thing is AI is now replacing Google, right? So if you look something up, you got it on AI. But one of the things we're doing is we're actually, we're looking at different presentations and things like that. I find that a presentation that might take 3 or 4 days to put together, I can get together in a half an hour with AI, and another hour after that of actually really making it tight to what the exact message we want to provide. One of the things that I find is when an AI system goes to the marketplace, it pulls what the marketplace thinks, not what you think. So the AI we use is closed. So we make sure we get versions that are paid and closed, and we've got a number of different ones that we're playing with, because there are ways to do it that are just more appealing to the eye than we have. But one of the things I'm constantly doing is shifting the message, because the predominant message out there is based on a 20th century management model, for example, and it's just not consistent with our beliefs. And my attitude is structures need to support people. You don't find that in the market yet very much. There's a little bit. There's people in it that are brilliant at this stuff, like Marcus Buckingham, and there's others that are really strong that way. But preponderance are, listen, people come and go with the systems, even though as you grow, you're going to outstrip your systems just as quickly as you're going to have problems with your people. So it's pretty obvious when I see AI, when we're dealing with our types of subject matter, that it's not there. The other thing is when I write something, I just make sure that I write it, and I might get it proofed with AI, but I don't go any further than that.
Michael, this has been awesome. Great conversation. For those listening, check out Freedom by Design, Michael's latest book. It's a fantastic first few chapters. I will get through it, I promise. But Michael,
Excellent.
if our audience has any questions for you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
You can our website is walchbusinessgrowth.com. So Walch, business growth, all one word.com. And, just connecting with us through that. If they want to get the book, they can just go to Amazon. Amazon in any number of countries has it. We're in Canada, the US, UK, Australia, Mexico. I've seen it in, so it's getting some traction. We're pretty excited about that. Or just connect with me on LinkedIn. Just type in Michael Walch Vancouver and you'll find me. I'm the guy that looks like that guy right there.
There you go. Awesome. Michael, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, podcast listener, for checking out that episode of Drop the Mic. If you like that episode, I would love it if you went on over to your podcast platform and left us a 5-star review. And if you don't want to miss an upcoming episode of Drop the Mic, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. Thanks again. See you soon.